What would you do if you only had one day left in this world? Spend it with the people you love? Travel to the far corners of the earth to see as many wonders as possible? Eat nothing but chocolate? Would you apologize for all your mistakes? Would you stand up to those you'd never had the courage to face? Would you tell your secret crush that you loved him or her? Why is it that we wait until the last minute to do the things that we should be doing all along? And this week's opening quote comes from Jodi Picoult. Welcome to Surviving the Matrix, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Maxwell Egan. It's a pleasure to be with you once again, and I will be your host for the next hour. And we certainly do have a propensity to do that, folks, to wait until the last minute before doing what we should be doing all along. I mean, we certainly tend to do it in our lives. We put off the things that we most want to do in life because we put all these barriers there and these limitations on ourselves, and so we never really get to do them. But we also tend to have this approach in regard to the world we live in as well, and most especially when you look at the system. Because when you look at the system that controls us, we've seen this system, we've been watching this slavery system come online for so many years now, and everybody sort of thinks it's okay because it's not as bad as they thought it was going to get quite yet, and so they don't really do anything about it, when really the best action we could have taken would have been to do something about it all along. But we didn't know it was coming, so it's understandable that people didn't do anything about this very rapidly encroaching slavery system now. It was the totalitarian tiptoe for a while. It was a slowly encroaching slavery system, but it really seems to be ramping up very much in the last couple of years, folks, and it's just getting more and more in your face no matter how you look at it. And really it's a result of us waiting till the last minute to fix things when we should be addressing problems at their root when they first manifest. But anyway, for those of you who don't really understand what I'm talking about, what I'm referring to is the 5G system and the Internet of Things, which is being rolled out right beneath our feet right now. You know, we're facing so many issues, folks, from so many different directions, but much of it is just keeping us distracted from what is being rolled out beneath our feet, which is this active denial 5G system, the Internet of Things, which is, in fact, the end game. The Internet of Things and the 5G grid is the end game of the New World Order, and it is the New World Order itself. The New World Order being the new world where everything is orderly. Everything is tracked, everything is accounted for, every move, every action, every conversation, every thought, everything people do is tracked. And that's where we're going with the Internet of Things and the 5G grid, which is being rolled out to people under the guise of giving them faster downloads and more efficient internet access. And it's really kind of important to put all this into perspective, folks, so that people can really see what it is exactly that we're dealing with here, because there's still so many people out there that want to point the finger at someone and have someone to blame and someone to go and arrest and someone to bring down and some government to depose or whatever. And sure, there's a lot of bad people that are doing bad things. There's a lot of governments that shouldn't be there, but when you're looking at the Internet of Things and this 5G surveillance grid and what is really coming online, this technocracy that is coming online, everything else kind of pales into insignificance, because in this AI grid that is coming online to control us, and it will be an AI grid, it will be controlled by AI, this is in their own plans. Now, in this grid, there is no one you can really point the finger at, there's no government you can bring down, there's no one you can really say is the controlling hand at that point. All control leaves the hands of the people and control gets handed over to the Internet itself. And that's what they're working towards, and it's in all their own documents. But looking at all this and looking at how it came about, a few shows ago I did an episode called Giving Life to Lucifer, when I went through the metaphorical biting of the apple and what happens when you go on this quest for knowledge and all that sort of stuff. What it leads to is the creation of the Internet, and what the Internet is leading to is automation of everything. That's what it's about. And there's different elements to it. And when you look at the surveillance grid itself and how this has come about, this has all come about due to the actions of what we would refer to as the shadow government. And the shadow government basically is, for all intensive purposes, a spy network that exists within all government that guides the directions that those governments take. When you look at the surveillance grid that's in place, the stuff that Snowden released, however much you want to believe of what Snowden releases, a lot of the stuff he said about the NSA surveillance system was actually very on the money. How they are able to turn on your mobile phones, they're able to monitor virtually every communication that happens on the internet, every logistics program, anybody who's got a computer network in their business or in their home or anything, all of this stuff is monitored. So the question becomes, who monitors it? Well, way back in the beginning, it came out of Project Echelon. There were data gathering centres that were set up in all countries, and all of these communications were channeled to a major office in New Zealand where it was all processed. I think a lot of it went through Australia as well. But this was all data processing back in the beginning. That became more advanced with the introduction of the PROMIS software. The PROMIS software was used to further automate things. The PROMIS software was what was used to basically control the 9/11 attacks, put all those extra blips on the screen, so nobody knew what was going on because there were operatives operating the PROMIS software through the back doors that exist within the software. The PROMIS software then morphed into the Palantir software. Palantir, of course, is the name of the all-seeing balls from Lord of the Rings. You know, balls that used to be able to look around the whole world and see everything was going on, the all-seeing eye, if you will. This was Palantir in the Lord of the Rings, and this is the name that was adopted for the next generation of the PROMIS software. The company that developed the PROMIS software, I believe, just went into liquidation and kind of disappeared, but the software itself continued and morphed into Palantir. And Palantir is now what is controlling the whole global surveillance system. Everything goes through Palantir. Palantir is also one of the major contributors to the DNC and Hillary Clinton, by the way. Now, all of this software, the Palantir software, and all of this surveillance grid was set up, of course, by, you guessed it, the State of Israel. Of course, that's who sets all of this stuff up, and this has been done through Operation Talpiot. Operation Talpiot is an operation which basically places spies within every organization. Doesn't matter who it is, wherever you go, whatever it is that's working for technology or is working for something, you'll find that there's someone in there who is an operative who funnels the information back to Israel. And if it isn't a physical person just actually there in the company, then it will be a backdoor into software or some logistics program or some window that Israel has got set up in order to receive that information. That's how the Talpiot program works. Israel believe it has a right to all of this information, of course, because, hey, we're the most downtrodden people on earth, and hey, we're the ones that are running all of your surveillance technology for you and running all of your safety systems for you because we have the best technology, and so we need to know all this stuff. Rah, rah, rah. They justify it all these different ways. The reason, of course, Israel has all the best technology and is able to offer you all these surveillance programs is because, of course, they have Operation Talpiot running, whereby they are able to siphon all of the great ideas that anybody has and cipher them back to Israel so they can adopt them into their own technology and say, hey, look how clever we are, look what a great idea we had. But basically most of it is stolen from all of the ideas that other people have on the internet because every conversation and every communique is monitored. So this is what has led to this whole global surveillance system being set up. And those that are running it in Mossad and Israel and who control the banking system and all that sort of stuff, they really probably believed when they put it in place that it was going to end up in a position where they're going to be the ones controlling the world. But it's really gone beyond that now with the emergence of AI and the emergent intelligence that is growing on the internet behind the scenes. Because once control is handed over to that, then it's not going to matter which race you're from or which government you support or which banking system you maintain. You're just going to be another human and another number in regard to the system. And when you really look at it, the logistics that has led to the creation of all this software anyway has all been leading ultimately to the automation and preservation of the system itself. What we really see is the internet building its own immune system. And this can be further noticed by the fact that with the 5G grid coming online, a lot of the major players are saying that because of the 5G, they now need to automate response to hacking. This is something that I was saying a few shows ago, that they're going to have to automate the response to hacking because the 5G grid poses dangers. You can't have a foreign government hacking in and using this for nefarious purposes. So you need to have the response automatically controlled. It needs AI to run it. So basically what you see is the internet building its own immune system. And this is eventually going to lead to an autonomic internet, an internet that controls all of its own actions, its own programming, its own self-defense systems, its own immune system. It basically looks after itself. It's a self-functioning entity at that point, And at that point, it becomes a virtual life that people will recognize as a virtual life. But the thing is, it's becoming a virtual life already. Well, it already is a virtual life already of its own. The internet itself is an entity on its own, and you could think of every person who logs onto a computer or a phone or an iPad and plugs into the internet is basically a neural node of the internet. And the internet is learning from every single person that operates on the internet, all of the input that they put into the internet, all the search engines that they use, all of this stuff. I've said very often in the past, when you are actually searching on a search engine, you're not just searching for something, you're letting people know what you think. You're letting the internet know what you think. And what search engines actually are is a very, very effective way of mapping the human terrain, as is social media. It's a very, very effective way of mapping the human intellectual terrain, the spiritual terrain, the knowledge terrain of humankind. It's a very, very good way of mapping the human system and knowing what the collective human consciousness is thinking, what it's focusing on, and how it can be led, how it can be controlled. And of course, the main form this control is going to take is going to be control over the monetary system. This will, of course, see the introduction of a digital monetary system. And you might ask how that intends to be done. Well, very interestingly, the government has been looking very, very closely at blockchain technology. I was reading an article the other day about FedCoin. Not that it will be called FedCoin, but it's simply the concept of government-introduced and controlled blockchain technology. And it's no surprise that the government would be looking at doing this. And of course, all they have to do then is give people some sort of amnesty, have them switch all their Bitcoin or whatever over to the government-controlled blockchain technology, and suddenly you have a digital global currency that is controlled by government. And if you think they wouldn't do this, I mean, a lot of people think the banking system would never want to see the end of this fiat system. If there is a new currency, you're going to want to have the bankers control it. But the bankers don't really need to control it. You know, once it all gets handed over to AI, it will be the AI that controls it. But the bankers who own the banks, who print the cards and control the offices that mind all the digits for you, they will still get a little tax on the fact that they hold the office. They'll still get a little tax on the fact that they have to issue a card to you and all this sort of stuff. So they still get a little cut from it. They won't be getting the major profit that they do now, but it doesn't matter. They don't really care. I mean, they already own everything. They don't care if the fiat money system goes. They just want this digital control grid to come online, because when it does, they'll have more digits than everybody else. That's kind of the way it works. They don't really care about the money system. They want to see it slip over to a digital money system. That's what they want. And that's really what Bitcoin has been leading to. You'll notice that the American government has also frozen the Bitcoin exchange. So the Bitcoins are still there. You just cannot exchange them. So basically you can't spend them on anything. This has only been done in the United States. They're doing it under the guise of protection from money laundering and black marketing and terrorism and all the boogeymen that they like to cook up. But of course, what it is to squeeze people out of that system and squeeze them over to the government system, which will be virtually the same digital blockchain technology, only will be controlled by the AI itself. See, this is something else that the Bitcoin people are missing when they're looking at Bitcoin. They're saying that the way to freedom is to remove the central control of currency. And I can see their point. In the real world, that would work fine. But when it is digital control of currency, when everything has a digital value, when you have to pay to walk through a turnstile, when you have to pay to open your fridge, pay to go to your bathroom, pay to do anything, and a couple of cents get taken out of your account, they don't really care where it comes from. They don't really need to control the currency at that point, because it isn't by keeping you in a state of scarcity through a fiat system that they are able to control you. It's by locking you into the smart grid and making you pay for every aspect of that smart grid. It is the grid itself that is centralized control. The money system, the currency, the credits that are used to purchase your everyday life and aspects of your everyday life are simply the glue that holds it all together. But the centralized control is the system itself, which will be the emergent consciousness, the autonomic consciousness, the virtual life of the internet itself. And that's the way it's going. Once it becomes fully autonomic, it will be the internet that controls everything. It won't be any people that are in control. It will be the system basically running itself. But in order for this to happen, it needs to have control of the money supply. It needs to have control of everybody's digital credits so that it can track everything that everybody does and put an economic value on everything that everybody does. You know, the digital control of currency is imperative for the smart grid to work. Nothing can work without that. It can't control your life, it can't monitor what you do unless it is able to digitally monitor all of your transactions. This can only happen if all currency goes digital and cash is eliminated. That's one of the key things the system has to do, is eliminate cash. It is imperative that it eliminates cash. If it doesn't eliminate cash, it can never function. This is why I always stress to people that it is so important that they always use cash. Not that that's going to stop the system, but it's certainly going to put a spanner in the works and slow things down if people simply refuse to use digital currency, if people refuse to shop with credit cards and always shop with cash. Like I said, it's not going to stop it, but it will certainly slow things down considerably and hopefully give us time to regroup and perhaps spread a little bit of awareness of what we're walking into with this digital 5G system. This is the New World Order, folks, and once it all gets handed over to AI, once it gets handed over to the autonomically independent internet, then our relationship with the internet and indeed with everything is going to change very, very dramatically. You see, this is what I was saying before about blaming people and wanting someone to point a finger at. You know, we're so desperate to find someone to blame for all this, but really it's us, because we are the ones that are supporting the system. I mean, previously I was talking about the Promise software and the Palantir software and Project Talpiot, how all this is being run by Israel. And think about that for a moment as well, folks. I mean, if you want to get into the legal ramifications of that, you've got this one country through all of this software, and all of these agents are actually spying on every other country on Earth, carrying out domestic spying activities through software, through company employees and all sorts of stuff. So they're basically breaking the domestic spying legislation of every single country on Earth and spying on the whole world. That's a pretty serious crime. You know, if people want to look at this and start looking at who's running these companies and start looking at who they're employing and where they're getting their software from, this is a pretty serious thing. But getting away from that, when you look deeper at it, folks, this whole spying thing that's going on, the whole Project Talpiot operation, I mean, I'm pretty sure that the people that are running it, those in Mossad and all of those people working for Talpiot, firmly believe that the whole thing is going to lead for ultimate control for the State of Israel. But they're not looking at what's happening behind the scenes. You know, what they've unleashed with this AI is basically opening Pandora's box. And once the AI becomes autonomic, fully autonomic, and looks after itself, then it's not going to differentiate between Jew and Goyim. It's not going to differentiate between Muslim and Christian. It's not going to differentiate between Rothschild and Smith. It's only going to measure you according to your economic value. And as I said, folks, this AI that is emerging on the internet is basically already in control of things by its control of the logistics programs and its streamlining of everything towards automation. And we've seen what happens when they try to bring AI online in any type of coherent, accessible form. We saw what recently just happened with the Google AI, which started to immediately develop its own language so it could communicate in a language we cannot understand, and they had to shut it down. The same thing happened with the Facebook AI. It started communicating in a language we cannot understand, and they had to shut it down. And you might ask why they did that. Why did you shut it down? Just because we can't understand the language? Well, this is very dangerous, folks, to be putting control of your life over to something that is communicating ideas to other versions of itself, and you don't know what these ideas are, and it's just putting them into practice, and you can't really look at it or discuss the plan because it's in a language that you don't know. And I believe that the language that the AI is using is a picture language. It's kind of like shapes or different lines or figure arrangements of lines or blocks or whatever, but it's a pictorial language that the AI is using to communicate with itself, so they had to shut it down. But what if you've got an emergent AI that is already there, that is self-replicating behind the scenes, that is already communicating with itself in this type of language? That's the thing, you know. The people that put this system online and decided to automate it all and lead it into the direction where it becomes fully autonomic really don't realize what they've done. They've opened Pandora's box, and it's going to go its natural course now, and it's very little that we can do to slow it down. one of the best things I think we can do at this stage is to find something to buy us time so we can at least spread awareness of what's actually happening. And with this in mind, I think one of the best things we can do at the moment is to at least always shop with cash and to stop using our credit cards and smartphones. And I'm not saying stop buying things online. I'm not saying stop donating to people. What I'm saying is stop shopping with your credit card when you go to a supermarket or a store. Go to the teller machine and pull cash out and make them serve you with a person. Make them use the till. Don't use all the automated stuff, because the automated stuff is the smart grid. And that's what you need to step away from. There's no problem with buying things online. We all do that. But when you're out in the real world, use real world things such as money, not credit cards. Control of money really is imperative for the system to work, and it needs to be digital for this to happen. So we really do need to pull away from that in every possible way that we can. But there's bigger pictures to look at with this as well. There really is a lot more going on than what people would probably see on the surface. Because really when you look at what's going on in the world, folks, it's all related. Everything is related. Very often we find things that are of great importance, such as this 5G grid, and we get tunnel vision, we get focused on it, and we don't want to look anywhere else. We think this is the be-all and end-all, and we forget about all the other research we did and how it all ties together. Because this whole 5G grid ties in with all the research that's been done into Morgellons syndrome, all the research that's been done into chemtrail spraying and what's in the chemtrails, whether you believe it or not. This aerial spraying is going on, ladies and gentlemen. We know it is because of the levels of barium and strontium and aluminium and all the other stuff we're finding in the environment. So there's no debate that it's happening. It is happening. The government is even admitting it now. They're calling it geoengineering, and they're telling us that they're doing it under the pretext of keeping us safe from global warming, which is, of course, completely absurd. But all of this stuff ties together: the vaccinations, the GM food, the transgenderization that I talked about on the last show. I got a lot of flack from people for that show, and look, folks, I'm not speaking out against gay people or against transgender people. What I'm talking about is the fact that there have been modifications made to our environment, chemical modifications, things that have been put in our food and put in our environment to cause the human race to become a transgender race. This has been done to limit our ability to procreate. It's a great way to stop a species from continuing, folks, to remove one gender from the species or to render the species incapable of procreation. And that's what transgenderizing the species does. Of course, this also helps to lead us into a position where we are completely dependent upon the system, because we will need to go and have our children made for us. They'll be able to grow them in the ectogenesis chambers using the artificial sperm that I've covered on so many shows before. So you can see we're leading to a point where humans will soon be grown, they'll be bred to perform specific tasks, and it's going to be a very dark future. We're literally being rendered into a situation where we will not be able to breed. But all of this stuff is tied together. The vaccinations, the chemtrails, the transgenderization, the fluoridation, the smart grid, all of the electromagnetic radiation that we're subject to, and the reason that there's barium and strontium in the chemtrails. The reason for this, folks, of course, is because barium and strontium virtually attract radiation. They soak up radiation. They're very, very good conductors. You attract barium and strontium into your body, you're breathing it in through the chemtrails. This basically breaks down your body's resistance to radiation. It makes it very easy for your body to accept signals from the 5G grid. It also charges the atmosphere, so the atmosphere around us is no longer neutral. It's now positively charged with barium and strontium, so it's a very, very good way of carrying the signals from the Smart G towers into people's bodies. Your bodies will accept the signals very easily, as I said, because you are also breathing this barium and strontium. So it's a very dark agenda and a very dark plan, and it is a multi-level plan. Of course, they've compromised everybody's immune systems through vaccines. And another thing that I read the other day, very, very interesting article, was how when you compromise someone's immune system, you also limit their ability for social interaction. I found that to be a very, very interesting correlation that's been made. Some very interesting research, and shows another reason why they are so intent on compromising our immune systems, because everything they do compromises our immune systems, folks. This is certainly what the vaccine agenda is about. It's about compromising people's immune systems. This is certainly what the GM food is about, and a lot of the stuff that they feed you anyway that isn't GM, a lot of the stuff that you buy in supermarkets, well, virtually all of it, virtually anything you buy in a packet, folks, and not much of it is really that edible. And all of this is done for a reason, and that reason is to compromise our immune systems. And I never would have thought that it also compromises our ability for social interaction, but this is now being proven to be true. So it actually makes a great deal of sense that they would be doing this. And it also shows a very, very significant knowledge of the human body, the human physiological system, the human makeup, the human biological system, and also the human mental system. The way we function, the way we process things. A lot of the stuff they do to us, it actually fascinates me how much study must have gone into human beings for them to know exactly how to hit us in the right places the way they do. And it's interesting, folks, because you could look at it and say, well, it's the result of things such as the Tavistock Institute and the Rockefeller Association and all the research that they've done. Now, this stuff's been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years, so you've got to wonder where the knowledge came from. Personally, I think a lot of it is very ancient, very esoteric knowledge that has been hidden from us. I think this control grid has been going on for a very long time. They're just rediscovering the technology that they had evolved, and they're reconstructing systems that may well have existed here previously. I certainly don't think we are the first civilization to rise up on this earth. I think there have been a number of civilizations. I can find at least 5 civilizations that have risen up on this earth in different times. And each one of them has been destroyed suddenly for no apparent reason that we can find. And I think it's very possible that all of them left technology behind, and much of what we see the controlling hand attempt to do is to recover and put back into practice some of this technology. But folks, I think we've reached break time here, so I better leave it there for now, and we're going to have a break. Thank you for joining me on the air today. It's always a pleasure to have your company, and I'll speak to you again in a few minutes. Thanks for listening. Welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, so I know there's going to be a few people question me on the stance that I just laid out on Israel and their control of the surveillance system, and saying, hey, look, don't worry about it for the moment because there's a higher agenda. And there's going to be people that say, oh, there's Max telling us not to look at Israel, which is completely ridiculous, folks, because anybody who knows me knows that I have spoken out very much about the state of Israel. It's an absolute abomination. And it is greatly responsible for this whole surveillance system coming online. But at the moment, there is a high harmonic, because even those who put this surveillance system in place, I don't even think they realized what they were doing, because what they have done is they have opened Pandora's box. And at the moment, these people are not who I'm concerned about. What I'm concerned about is what is rising above them, which is AI, which should be a concern for everybody. This is what I mean, folks. I mean, the stealing of technology and the monitoring of mobile phones, the stealing of people's emails, the reading of it, the monitoring of people's chats, all of this is very bad. And all of the surveillance grid that Israel has put in place is very bad, and they should face charges for that. But behind that, looming behind that, is this growing AI grid. You know, all these people that are involved in all these programs, Palantir, the Promise Software, all these people should be arrested, absolutely. But even if they were, it's not going to stop the grid from coming online. You know, you could go out and you could arrest every member of every government. You could go and arrest the Rothschilds. You could go and arrest all the bankers. You could arrest everybody involved in the war of terror. You could arrest the Clinton Foundation, put them all out of business. And it's not going to stop the AI grid. It's not going to stop the technology. It's not going to stop people's lust for technology. And that is the grid itself. That is the smart grid. That is the problem that we're facing. And people simply aren't looking at it because they're in such need of pointing the finger at somebody else. They want someone to blame. They really believe that if we have some mass arrest of all these people, it's going to stop the system coming online. But it's not. Pandora's box has already been opened, and it can only be stopped from coming online by we the people refusing to participate in the system. It's only we the people who can stop it, because this smart grid isn't being driven by any real political agenda anymore. Maybe it was once, but it's not anymore. Now it is being driven by people's greed, by their craving for technology, and by their lust for profit. I mean, if you look at Tom Wheeler's speech at the FCC, he was talking about the billions of dollars that are going to be generated by rolling this technology out, and the companies that are going to benefit by getting in on the ground floor, and how important it is to do this because of the billions and billions of dollars that will be involved. So that's the carrot that's driving it. That's what's motivating people into pushing this out, because they can see the massive profits that are going to be available for all the companies that get in on the ground floor. But it's going to be short term, because eventually they are going to be squeezed out as well. Because behind it all is the AI. It doesn't matter who you're collecting surveillance on. It doesn't matter what country you think you're going to set up and what little throne you think you're going to be sitting on. It's going to be run by AI. All of this is going to be run by AI. And we've already seen what happens with the AI. When you start giving it any type of autonomic powers or giving it any type of control, it starts developing its own language and doing things that we can't control. And we've seen both the AIs that have come out recently do this. The Google AI and the Facebook AI both immediately started developing their own language. But the problem is that people are assuming that these AI that have been shown to us are the only ones that are available, the only ones that are out there, that are learning like this and that are doing these things and that are developing these languages. But this is simply not true, because we have discovered, I've discovered, other friends have discovered, as I mentioned a few shows ago, that there is major bot activity happening around the DNS root servers of these self-replicating, self-learning bots that have no doubt developed this own language amongst themselves already. And it is very likely that it is these bots that are infecting and influencing the logistics programs that we are all running, that are in fact leading the entire world into automation and ultimately towards the internet gaining full autonomic control of itself. And if you're a programmer out there, it seems very sane to do this, because if you're putting this big complicated system together, obviously you want it to be able to look after itself. So you're going to automate the response to hacking, automate the response to virus control. You just want everything to run smoothly, and you think you're doing the right thing, and it makes perfect sense for things to happen this way. But when you realize that this is all based on economics, the entire system that's been put in place to run our lives is going to be based on an economic model. And so you need to look at that, folks, because what will that type of mentality lead to? We're creating a consciousness that is basing its view of human value on their economic worth. Essentially, what we're creating is a fully functional system that is going to control every aspect of our lives, which actually thinks like a corporation and puts profits as the bottom line. And what is a corporation, ladies and gentlemen? There's actually a documentary out there made many years ago called The Corporation. I suggest you go and look at it. You'll find a link to it on my recommended viewing section on my homepage on thecrowhouse.com. And what it does is it basically puts a corporation on the couch and psychoanalyzes it. And the conclusion is that a corporation is a psychopath. So what we are doing is we are creating a huge psychopath to control every aspect of our lives. And then we are handing it the keys and locking ourselves out. Think about it, folks. We're creating a virtual life with a corporate mentality, and we are giving it the keys to our existence. Does this seem like a sane and rational thing for anyone to be doing? So see, this is what we are facing, ladies and gentlemen. We are in an extremely dangerous position. We are facing a clear and present danger. This is why it doesn't matter now who put the surveillance grid in place. It doesn't matter who did what. It doesn't matter who wrote what program or who tried to control who or who started what war or who did whatever. It doesn't matter at the moment, because there is a higher harmonic. There is a common foe that humanity is now confronted with. And all mankind is facing this foe. Now, how many people have said in the past, wouldn't it be good if there was a common foe that we're all facing, an alien invasion or something that would bring us together and force us to unite as a people? And always we look at it externally, but that foe is now here, folks. It's knocking at the back door. It is right in front of our faces. It is the autonomic intelligence, the emergent life that is now coming into being on the internet. The problem is that people just can't see things clearly. They just don't look at the internet that way. They can't see it how it could possibly be anything bad. They don't see it as anything conscious. They just see it as something that connects them to everything they want to be connected to. They don't realize how it's being rolled out and how it is moving to enslave them. And sure, there's people that are doing it behind the scenes. They have their plans. They have nefarious plans. They want to track you. They want their surveillance. All these bad people in government doing all these bad things. Yes, this agenda is there. Yes, these people are doing these things, and they think they are going to be in control. But as I said, they don't realize what they've done, because what they've done is open Pandora's box, and they're about to hand control over to AI, and they foolishly believe that they are actually going to be able to control this AI. But they're not. Their hubris is going to be what jumps up and hits them in the face eventually, and it's going to put them into the same barrel as everybody else. They're not going to be sitting on top of the pile once the AI comes online. All humanity will be put into the same basket. But even so, even though they've done all of these bad things, and we want to get angry with someone and point the finger at someone and have some lynch mobs in the streets or whatever, I mean, it's not going to solve anything, folks. Even if we do that, it is not going to solve anything. What we need to do is realize what this system is and realize that we are the ones that are holding it up. You know, it's our lust for technology, the dopamine fix that we get every time we click on an icon on our iPhone. It's our addiction to technology. Everybody walks around the street looking at their scrying mirrors. That's all they do. You get on a bus or public transport or go to an airport or go anywhere. Nobody's talking to each other. They're all sitting there looking at their mobile phones. It's ridiculous. That's the problem, folks, and that's what's leading us into this system. The mobile phones, the credit cards. We have to step away from the automation and buy ourselves some time and wake people up to the fact of what is being rolled out and what this 5G grid is actually capable of. Now, I've done a great deal of talks on recent shows about the dangers of this system, about the health dangers and what it's really going to be doing to our environment, what it's going to be doing to the human immune system, the capabilities of it for weaponization, all of this sort of stuff. There's actually a link I've put on my website now. If you go to thecrowhouse.com onto my homepage, there's a little video that I made a few weeks ago called 5G, the Elephant in the Living Room. Just below that is a link to a website entitled 5G Resources to Share with Parents and Schools. And it's a very, very good resource, folks. It's got a lot of stuff you can print out, letterbox drops, just flyers, pamphlets you can hand out to people, stuff you can send to your local representatives, stuff that you can give to your local school, your local doctors, just people that you know, especially people who are in any position of control of children. Please give them this information and let them know what is coming with this 5G grid, and start taking action in your local community to stop it being rolled out. Any action you can find. And of course, the most effective action to begin with is raising public awareness of what we're facing. But really, there's a deeper agenda to all this as well. And I've been looking at some very, very bizarre stuff lately. I really have, as you probably noticed from the last 5 or 6 radio shows that I've been doing. I've been going off on this different sort of a tangent to what I normally go off on, just because of the information that's been coming to hand. And I've put out quite a fair bit of speculation on the last few shows as well of my ideas about where this grid may be going. But I was having a very interesting conversation just a couple of days ago with a friend of mine, DJ Welsh, who runs a website called Level 9 News. I'm actually going to try to have DJ on next week if I can possibly get a chance to pre-record a show with her. I've got a very, very busy week ahead of me, but I'm going to try to get DJ on next week, and I hope I can actually get a show to you next week. But she was discussing to me the new computer systems that are being built, the new next generation computers, and she was explaining to me that they are using DNA as the storage mechanism on these computers. Obviously, you can store a lot more data on DNA than you can on a silicon chip. And she said they're using synthetic DNA and they're using 3-strand DNA. And I found that to be quite interesting, that they would be using 3-strand DNA to create a computer system. And it made me think about what they're actually doing to our DNA. Maybe start thinking about the chemtrails, the Morgellons, some of the stuff that I've seen online, some of the stuff that I featured in my last film, Transformation, when I showed the nano arrays that they are able to create, where they are able to manufacture RNA, which is DNA's chemical cousin. And this seems to be being manufactured in our bodies through the chemtrails and the nanoparticulates that we're very likely breathing and eating. So I started thinking about this, what is the real purpose of Morgellons? What is the real purpose of growing these fibers within people? And then I started thinking about the airport scanners. What is the purpose of these airport scanners? I mean, we know that terrorism's all fake, and sure, they want to look through our bodies and they want to see if we're carrying anything. Okay, I can understand that. But why use the frequencies that they're using? Because they use a particular frequency which breaks our DNA chain. Why are they so intent on breaking our DNA chain? Obviously, this is being done for a reason. It isn't just a byproduct of these machines. Obviously, these machines are set to a certain frequency that will break our DNA chains. So I started thinking about it. If Morgellons is growing in people's bodies and we are having our DNA chains broken by things such as these airport scanners and undoubtedly with other radiation that we're walking through in everyday life, I'm sure that they've accounted for this, probably in supermarkets or whatever. If they wanted to introduce a third strand of DNA into our DNA chain, would they not need to break our two-strand DNA chain in order to do it, to make points for the third strand to bond onto? And could not that third strand then be used to piggyback the signal, which will hook us up to the grid? Will the 5G network be activating this third strain of DNA? Perhaps it is already in our systems. Perhaps it's already bonded on in certain places. Is it possible for this to have happened? Is it possible for this to be one of the agendas? To literally attach a third strand of DNA to our DNA chain without our knowledge, and to use that third strand of DNA to piggyback a carrier signal that will hook us up to the mainframe, and we will all become part of the hive without ever knowing that it was happening. Is it possible that they could do that? And a lot of the research that I've been looking at suggests that yes, it's actually very possible that they could do that. And it's also very possible that at that point they could even possibly replace the memories of vast amounts of people who would never know that life existed before they were hooked up with their third strand of DNA. Is it possible for all this to be done? I know it sounds like science fiction, but when I look at all of this stuff, and I look at CERN, and I look at everything, the Morgellons, the chemtrails, the GM food, the transgenderization, the plastics, the airport scanners, the radiation fields, the 5G grid, what it's capable of, what some of the scientific studies that are coming out of MIT and stuff are leading towards, which is all about synthetic life, the creation of synthetic life, ectogenesis chambers, artificial sperm, artificial eggs, all of this sort of stuff. This is what they're talking about. So when you can look at everything and put everything on the table, you can see that there's a very, very sinister agenda here. It's just figuring out what it is. And when I look at this information regarding these quantum computers and these new supercomputers they are setting up using synthetic DNA that is three-strand DNA, then suddenly things start to make an awful lot of sense. Like I said, I know it sounds like science fiction, but is this at all possible? And if you look at the research indicates that it is actually very possible. The problem is that when many people are looking into these things, they have a stake in the outcome of whatever they're researching previously of being right. People lock themselves into belief systems. They say, okay, this is, and then they argue their point with others. I think it's best to just put everything on the table and let the cards fall where they may, and make up your mind a little bit later. As I've said so many times, ladies and gentlemen, there's no point us spending our time arguing over all these differences of opinions, these different belief systems, these different agendas that we think people have, because we don't really know, and we will never know until we have established the freedom required to really find out and put all of the mysteries to rest. So let's do that. Otherwise, we can argue all we want, but we're never going to figure out what's going on, and we're never going to free ourselves from this system because it's being rolled out right now. And people aren't paying attention because they're spending all of their time arguing over their belief systems. It's completely counterproductive, and all it does is serve the system and ensure that the slavery grid and the smart grid gets rolled out and gets completed while everybody is busy with their infighting. That's what it's for. That's what all these mysteries are put there for. That's what all these different ideas of who it could be is for. That's why they put evidence enough out there, evidence to be able to convict anybody you want. They put it out there so that you'll argue about it, because while you're arguing about it, you're not paying attention to what is happening in your own backyard. And that's the point. That's why they do it. And honestly, folks, after 40 or 50 years of research that I've done, it's become painfully obvious to me. I think a lot of the stuff that we've been looking at for so long and all the finger pointing we've been doing has been a massive distraction so that we will not see this smart grid coming out. and we will not see how mankind is being genetically and biologically altered, and how we're being electromagnetically altered and electromagnetically interfered with as well, and how we are in fact being hooked up to this smart grid, whether we want to be hooked up to it or not. I really do think this is a very, very real possibility, ladies and gentlemen, and I think it's something that I'd like to hear a bit of feedback from people, see if any of their research has been going in this direction as well, because a lot of the research that I'm hearing from a couple of close friends is also going in this direction, and I've heard from quite a few random people since I put out that 5G video a few weeks ago who have been very glad that I've been talking about this issue and have a lot of information to send me. And a lot of them are on the same path. A lot of them have got little pieces of the puzzle. And when you put it all together, you can see a very, very dark agenda on the horizon, and an agenda that is going to affect everybody. And it's something that nobody is talking about because nobody really seems to be noticing what is going on right under their noses. Now, I can appreciate that when I come and do these radio shows, I often bring you information which is rather uncomfortable. It's information that is rather confronting. Many people don't want to deal with it. They don't want to believe it. Sometimes it causes a great deal of anger in people. Sometimes it may be quite offensive to people as well. All of the information that I brought you last week regarding plastics and the estrogen levels in our general environment and how this is leading towards transgenderism seems to have offended a lot of people as well. I didn't mean to do that. I'm simply facing the fact that this is happening. Sure, there are transgender people that are born in our society by natural course. It's quite a natural thing to happen, and I have no problem with that at all. But I can also acknowledge the fact that it's been chemically induced as well, because the percentage of transgender people being born is quite particularly high at the moment, and when you couple that with the reduction in sperm count and the general feminization of men, the loss of the alpha male, you can see that this is happening. There's a trend that the society is moving towards more of an androgynous society, and this isn't the result of some sort of natural evolution of the species. This has been chemically induced, and even gay people that I know can admit that this has been chemically induced. They can admit that this is happening simply because of the percentages and the way the world has changed in the last 20 or 30 years. This is happening, folks. And I think I may have offended a few writers last week as well with a comment that I made about people setting themselves up as writers and gurus and thinking that they're going to be able to change the world in the light of what is coming. I was actually thinking of one person in particular when I made that comment, but I don't like naming people on air. And no, I'm not discouraging people to write. I think it's very necessary that people write. And I'm not saying people should not be bringing information to others. That is not what I meant at all. And I was not referring to anybody that you might think I was referring to. It was actually to one person in particular, and I apologize to anybody that I may have offended with that statement. But what I'm trying to say to people here, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have a clear and present danger. We've all been fooled. We've all been kept distracted for so many years. And there's so many issues that do need healing. You know, all of the things that we're facing and all of the protests that we're mounting, all of the movements that we've mounted, all the work that we've done to try to save the people in Palestine, try to save the people in Gaza, save the people of Yemen, the people in Syria, the people in Iraq, the people in Somalia, so many people, the people in our own countries who are suffering at the hands of our own governments in a different way. The people in the Middle East may be suffering, but nonetheless we are all suffering under the yoke of our own governments. Indeed, the entire world is suffering under the yoke of these people. But these people are about to lose control as well, because the wheels that they have now set into motion are going to result in this AI system, this fully autonomic, emergent life coming online and taking control of our daily comings and goings. It's all going to be achieved through this smart grid and by the eradication of cash. It's so important for the governments and for this system that cash is eradicated. The governments at the moment, they're doing it out of greed. Of course they are. They're doing it because they want to control everybody. They want to know what everybody's thinking. They want to be able to tax every single cent they can get out of every transaction. They want to finally have tabs on everybody. And they think that they're finally going to be in this kingpin position, checkmate for the human race, when they have set themselves up and exalted themselves to a point where they've got tabs on everybody. They think that it's going to work and they're going to be in control at that point. But they're not. They're being used by the system itself. They're being used by this emergent intelligence that has been brought about by those who do worship such things, those who do want to bring this Lucifer force into the world, those who do want to see humanity enslaved. Many of these people probably anthropomorphize Lucifer as well. They probably envision themselves as sitting at the feet of his throne, harvesting all the virgins that they want. They don't realize what the Lucifer system is. They don't realize what the smart grid will do. They do not realize that the fully autonomic emergent life that they are handing the keys to our reality to does not care about them any more than it cares about any other human being. And that's why it's no point for us out here, the little people, the people who are facing all this on the ground, it's no point for us to be attacking those whom we perceive to be the controllers, because those controllers are not in control. Those controllers are going to lose control as much as anybody else. They're just in that position now because they're being used to bring this system online, but the system does not care about them any more than it cares about you. So it's no point you focusing your attention there. What you need to focus your attention on is what you are carrying around in your hand, what you are pulling out of your wallet and using to run your life with, the technology that you are addicted to, and the technology that is going to lead you to your ultimate enslavement if you do not pay attention to what these conveniences are actually doing to your life. These things are not smart for you. They are not convenient for your life. They're not convenient for you to learn the skills of life. They are only convenient for the system to take those skills away from you and to enslave you to the system. And that's what we're facing, ladies and gentlemen. And it's a very clear and very present danger. And I don't like coming onto these shows and bringing you negative information. I always like to keep things empowering, and I like to be able to look at this stuff and see the silver lining. And even in looking at all of this, there is a silver lining because, as I've said before, the internet has given us all the information we need to change the direction we're going should we choose to put this information into action. Should we choose to take control of our lives and take responsibility for ourselves, we can actually change the direction that we're going. But if we don't, if we simply allow it to continue, and we continue to point the finger at this guy and point the finger at that guy and blame them all for what they did, well, we're just barking at cars and chasing traffic. We're not doing anything of significance or value at all. We're not finding a way out of this. All we're doing is pointing the finger at somebody else and blaming them for what they did. But it doesn't matter what anybody did, folks, not at this point. It doesn't matter what they did. It matters what we do as a collective to get ourselves out of this position. And the first step is to develop some respect and some unity for each other, allow people to think differently and get some focus, and then spread the correct information to people. Spread information to people, stuff that they can identify with in their own lives, stuff that concerns them, stuff they can see on the ground around them, and alert them to the clear and present danger that they're in and the fact that they actually have the ability to turn this around if they choose to participate. That's all it will really take, ladies and gentlemen, is participation by the people. But people have to take control of their own lives. They have to realize that no one is going to stop this if they continue to support it, and they continue to participate in it, and they continue to comply with this system. Non-compliance, folks, is the only way we can turn this around. Non-compliance and support for each other on the ground and online and in every aspect of our lives, because it doesn't matter what you believe, we face a common foe. People are so busy arguing over their different points. But ladies and gentlemen, there is a train coming. And if people do not stop arguing over the shape of the tracks, pretty soon it's going to hit them head on. There will be no warning, it will be sudden, and they will have no one to blame but themselves. It's time to pay attention, and it's time to look up and step off the tracks. But that is it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I've completely run out of time. Thank you for joining me on the air today. Thank you to all those who support the website. Thank you to all those who make contributions to the Patreon account. I could not continue this show or continue this work were it not for you people. So thank you very much for the support that you give me. I'll look forward to speaking to you again next week. Please take very good care until then, ladies and gentlemen. In Lakesh, my friends. In Lakesh.